The reason why evil is susceptible to total deflation is, if you agree with me,
speak with sort of derogation of the nature religions. You see, would that fall in the garden? Nature was regarded as corrupt.
The implication is that this category is permanent, and I'm saying that I don't think
but
evil in that sense is a permanent category for us. It awaits more information and insight.
Okay, we're going to distinguish for a minute good versus evil and good versus bad, just for the sake of conceptual clarity. In the moral landscape, you make a fundamental axiomatic claim. It looks like a moral claim, maybe it's a claim of fact, and the claim is there are bad lives and good lives.
Sure.
And the claim you make is that that's universally true.
Well, it's true for the requisite minds.
Buddhist, Hindu, Christian, doesn't matter.
Okay, but evil. So yes, I'm not telling you that you should purge the word evil from your vocabulary.
There's a bit for you that corrupts the whole world for us, and every spontaneous act is sinful.
Because if you take the Buddhist framework,
because nature is corrupt and has to be corrected, must not be yielded to. You get a totally different civilization.
And map it onto this continuum, you don't get good and evil.
This is the big statement today of what I call the reactionary conservative wing.
Holy city of 3 major Abrahamic religions.
The message in the symbol.
But this was no ordinary military campaign. It was a complex and multifaceted endeavor that would test the leadership and resolve of those involved who spearheaded the crusade, the main battles, the military tactics employed in the quest for control over the Holy Land.
And the notion of divinity or divine life, in my mind, would be what would determine my decision. And if it were rather crude, it would be a rather crude decision.
But also various historical and historiographical misconceptions and myths. Let's delve into our retelling
of modern man's civilizations.
You get essentially wisdom and ignorance.
I went on to retire as a Navy captain. I spent some time at NATO inside Ramstein, Germany at CC Air, one of the best jobs I ever had, tactical evaluation. I've also spent some time here in Norfolk speaking with NATO leaders on the concepts of complex adaptive systems. And of course, I've been overseas talking to NATO leaders about John Boyd's observer-oriented side and act loop. And unfortunately, I think they have the OODA loop wrong in this document. But we'll use that as a learning opportunity for all of us.
The evil is ignorance of all the well-being you and others would experience if you behaved another way.
And here's what I think this truly means as a whole. Whoever controls your attention during a psychedelic window, they control what gets strengthened, they control what gets weakened, and they control which version of you comes out on the other end of that experience.
Right, that's the Buddha's game. Or even within Hinduism, and this connects to your love of stories.
The message in the symbol, and the coordination of earthly and spiritual realizations can be interpreted out of those symbols.
So you take the Hindu text, the Ramayana, which is just a foundation. It's doing the work that the Bible is doing for Jews and Christians.
Now, the mythology of Cyrus's world is the mythology of the Persian prophet Zoroaster, or Zarathustra. This is a mythology of extraordinary interest to us, really, because it underlies all the later Hebrew and Christian thinking about the nature of the Messiah.
Sheep family. Lamb. Yearling. Ewe. Ram.
that the worst guy in the Ramayana.
He is always a schemer. Even in the womb, he's jostling with his brother. When his brother's born, he's grabbing the heel. So his name literally means...
And in classic biblical fashion, his second brother, Jacob, came out of the womb holding on to the heel of Esau. In Hebrew, the word heel is akev, and so hence the name Yaakov, the one who grabs the heel.
While she was still pregnant, God told her about the future of the children she was carrying. He told her that the children would fight each other and one of them would be stronger than the other. God also told her that the older child would serve the younger one.
So he comes out, his mother received a prophecy that he is going to be the chosen of the two sons. It says the older will serve the younger. And so mom helps him to scheme to get the blessing, even through deceit. We learned about that. Then everything blows up because Jacob basically steals the blessing from Esau.
The 10-headed demon Ravana, the prototypically evil person.
The god at the top, the god of the north, is Tezcatlipoca. Tezcatlipoca is the black Tezcatlipoca. He's the Tezcatlipoca that is the Tezcatlipoca. He's the god of smoking mirrors. So the Aztecs believed that when you looked into the mirror, you didn't really quite see yourself. That you were always sort of a mystery to yourself. That you were an unsolvable mystery. He's the god of things that are difficult to know. He's the god of darkness. He's the god of the night. He's the god of the mysterious.
And he is, at bottom, really not a bad guy. He's a great sage who's just, in a bad mood, essentially.
But don't you think that Americans, modern Americans, have rejected this idea, this Indian idea, this ancient idea of nature as revealing the divinity because it would have kept us from achieving dominance over nature?
Yeah, but that's the biblical condemnation of nature that they inherited from their own religion and brought with them. God is not in nature. God is separate from nature, and nature is not God. And this distinction between God and the world is not to be found in basic Hinduism or Buddhism either.
Right? He was obscured by ignorance.
I'm not sure I understand what that means. Well, if I project a beam of light at the wall, you see the light on the wall, but the wall is not the source of the light.
And so it is in the Buddhist canon. The Buddha meets a serial killer.
What is your name? Is Legion, for we are many. Send us into this wide, that we may enter them. Come out of the man.
And the notion of divinity or divine life in my mind would be what would determine my decision. If it were rather crude, it would be a rather crude decision.
But is divinity just what we think?
Yes.
Who, was wearing a garland of human fingers around his neck.
We often fall into the trap of thinking harder is holier. And at almost no other time in the year do we fall into that trap more heavily than...
It's not how heavy your Bible is, how close you sit to the front row in church, or whether you wear a cross or put a fish on your car. Jesus called you to follow him, not to simply look up to him, but to truly be his disciple, to lose your life so that it can be saved for eternity. But how do we live a life that is truly surrendered to God? What does it look like? That's the question we'll examine with today's email. It reads, very simply, what does it mean to take up my cross?
A lot of Christians wear crosses around their necks. You think when Jesus comes back, he's going to want to see a fucking cross, man? It's kind of like going up to Jackie Onassis with a rifle pendant on, Just thinking of John, Jackie. We love him. Trying to keep that memory alive, baby.
Explore the story of Abraham and Isaac. First, how each would approach the idea of offering a child sacrifice and what reward and or blessings they might negotiate with, or punishments they might use as coercion, or if they might refrain from such a test, e.g., divine game, for any reason.
The story of Abraham and Isaac, particularly the idea of child sacrifice as a divine test, could unfold differently depending on the deity involved. Here's how each might approach it.
According to this mythology, the first creation was perfect, but an evil power, Angra Mainyu, destroyed it. And there is now in process a conflict between the powers of good and the powers of evil.
Yahweh, Judaism. Yahweh famously commands Abraham to sacrifice Isaac in the Hebrew Bible, Genesis 22, framed as a test of faith and obedience. Yahweh's approach reflects his role as a God who demands absolute trust and loyalty. However, the story ultimately ends with Yahweh halting the sacrifice, providing a ram as a substitute.
Mars, the Roman god of war.
Motivation for the test. To demonstrate Abraham's unwavering faith and obedience, reinforcing the covenant. Reward blessing. Yahweh promises blessings of numerous descendants, greatness, and land for Abraham's faithfulness, signaling that obedience leads to divine favor. Reason to refrain. Yahweh intervenes at the last moment, emphasizing that he does not desire human sacrifice, but rather faith and moral commitment.
Now, these powers are not associated in the Persian system with any particular race, or any particular tribe, particular race, or any particular tribe. They are general, metaphysical, cosmic powers.
God the Father, Christianity. In Christianity, this story is often seen as a precursor to God the Father offering his own son, Jesus, as a sacrifice for humanity's sins. Motivation for the test. God the Father might still test Abraham to foreshadow his own future sacrifice, showing the depth of faith required in his divine plan. However, he might emphasize the redemptive nature of sacrifice rather than pure obedience. Reward blessing. Eternal salvation, positioning Abraham and Isaac as precursors to Christ, aligning them with divine grace and redemption for future generations. Reason to refrain. God the Father might avoid the test entirely, as Christ's sacrifice is already the ultimate fulfillment of such a divine act, rendering this game unnecessary.
And every individual, no matter of what race or of what tribe, has the choice to associate himself, to align himself, either with the powers of good or with the powers of evil.
In Islamic tradition, this story, known as the Dabi, involves Abraham and his son, often identified as Ishmael, Quran 37:99-113. Allah commands Abraham to sacrifice his son as a test of submission. Islam means submission to Allah's will. Motivation for the test. To affirm Ibrahim's total submission to Allah's will, demonstrating the ultimate act of surrender to divine authority. Reward blessing. Ibrahim is blessed with the promise of more children and descendants who will become great nations, emphasizing the rewards of submission to Allah. Reason to refrain. Like Yahweh, Allah spares the child by substituting a ram.
Mars, the Roman god of war.
And aligning him with himself with the powers of good, he works and fights for the restoration.
Underscoring that he does not need or desire human sacrifice, but values devotion and surrender above all.
And every individual, no matter of what race or of what tribe, has the choice to associate himself, to align himself, either with the powers of good or with the powers of evil. And aligning him with himself with the powers of good, he works and fights for the restoration.
Ahura Mazda, Zoroastrianism. Ahura Mazda operates in a moral framework rooted in truth, Asha, and would likely reject the idea of child sacrifice outright. Motivation for the test. Ahura Mazda would likely see no reason to test Abraham with such a demand, as this act would violate the principles of truth and righteousness. The cosmic struggle against evil would make such a test appear more aligned with Angra Mainyu, the destructive spirit. Reward, coercion. Instead of rewards tied to sacrifice, Ahura Mazda might bless Abraham for his commitment to Asha and truth, offering spiritual wisdom or guidance to help him align with the divine order. Reason to refrain. Ahura Mazda's philosophy would inherently oppose such a test, as it could sow chaos and falsehood, weakening humanity's fight against evil. Child sacrifice would be an affront to the principle of fostering life and harmony.
Now let me just very briefly say a word about the idea of the Messiah as it developed in these centuries. The first idea was that the Messiah would simply be the restorer of Israel to supremacy in its domain. And it was thought for some time that Hezekiah could actually be named the Messiah. After the Persian idea had been assimilated by the Hebrews, the notion was that the coming of the Messiah would mark the end of strife in the world, and the Hebrew Messiah would be the counterpart of the Persian Saoshyant.
Comparison. 1. Yahweh and Allah demand a willingness to sacrifice, emphasizing faith, obedience, and submission, but ultimately sparing the child, rejecting human sacrifice as unnecessary. 2. God the Father might frame the test as symbolic, foreshadowing Christ's sacrifice, or skip it entirely as the concept of divine grace supersedes it. 3. Ahura Mazda would reject the premise altogether, viewing such a test as antithetical to his moral framework of order and truth. Would you like to explore how each might react to Abraham's response or expand into other details of the story?
Do not suppose that I have come to bring peace to the earth. I did not come to bring peace, but a sword.
According to a 2011 study, children exposed to family violence show the same patterns of brain activity as soldiers exposed to combat.
For I have come to turn a man against his father.
To say, but like when I'm trying to make arguments in favor, for Israel, I realize I'm talking through a wall of dead children. Like that's what people are seeing.
A daughter against her mother.
So when I'm like, yeah, there's 1.5 civilians for, they're just seeing carnage.
A daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law.
That's the emotional blackmail. I mean, fair enough, but like again, and that's nice, but like again, I'm hearing that through a wall of children. It's like I think it's a harder argument than we're understanding. So I actually really strongly think that like Jewish day schools should absolutely say no child owns a smartphone until it's senior year. They don't own one.